On what seemed to be an ordinary flight, Lyra Steele, a rebellious rock queen, faced a harsh truth. Even at soaring altitudes, prejudice persists. An insulting demand to leave the first-class cabin not only sparked her anger but ignited a global movement. From one moment of indignity, could she dismantle an entire system of biases? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. And if you love inspiring stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on our next exciting content. Lyra Steele walked into JFK Airport's lounge with her unmistakable presence, a black leather jacket studded with silver, metallic blue hair styled high, and knee-high leather boots. Her heavily lined eyes and bold red lips stood out against her bronze skin, exuding defiance to every glance sent her way. This was Lyra the Rock Queen, a symbol of rebellion and freedom, freshly back from a sold-out European tour. She offered a polite smile as fans waved at her, with some even shouting, "Lyra, you're the best." These familiar cheers usually brought her comfort, but tonight she felt drained. A month of touring, countless sleepless nights, and endless interviews had depleted nearly all her energy. She needed this flight to recharge. A few quiet hours in first class, just what I need, Lyra thought as she passed through security. At the boarding gate, Lyra noticed the side eyes and hushed whispers of a group of passengers nearby. "She looks like she's from another world," someone muttered. Lyra pretended not to hear, but she could feel the judgment in their stares. This wasn't new to her, she was used to the scrutiny. Still, today felt different, almost hostile. Boarding the luxurious Skylux Airlines Boeing, Lyra noticed a strange tension in the air. As she stepped into the first-class cabin, which featured only 8 sleek leather seats, she felt the unwelcoming stares. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit glanced up at her, raised an eyebrow, and quickly buried himself in his magazine. Across the aisle, a woman clutched her purse tightly and averted her gaze. When Lyra reached her seat, the head flight attendant, Kara Fields, was greeting passengers. Kara smiled politely at everyone, but her expression hardened the moment her eyes met Lyra's. Without a word, Kara nodded curtly and turned away. Lyra furrowed her brow. "Do I really not belong here?" she wondered, but quickly dismissed the thought. "No, I paid for this seat, just like everyone else." Just minutes after takeoff, Kara began serving drinks. Lyra requested a lemonade with ice. "Please hold on a moment," Kara replied, and continued serving other passengers. Lyra waited and waited, but her drink never came. Other passengers had already received their beverages, but Lyra had not. When she pressed the call button, Kara appeared, her expression faintly annoyed as her gaze swept over Lyra. "Sorry, we're out of lemonade," Kara said curtly before leaving, not giving Lyra a chance to respond. Lyra sighed, feeling the unmistakable sting of being treated differently. When meals were served, Lyra requested the vegetarian dish she had pre-ordered. Instead, Kara brought her a meat dish. "I believe I ordered vegetarian," Lyra said calmly. "I'll check on that," Kara replied, but instead of addressing it right away, she continued serving other passengers first. Lyra glanced around the cabin. A few people snickered quietly, while others avoided looking at her altogether. "Why am I being made to feel like I don't belong here?" she thought. The middle-aged man seated behind her, Jeffrey, muttered loudly enough for Lyra to hear. "Can't understand why they let people like her in here." This time Lyra couldn't stay silent. She turned around and looked Jeffrey squarely in the eye. "People like me? You mean someone who paid for her seat, just like you?" Jeffrey didn't respond, offering only a mocking smirk. Lyra turned back to the window, watching the white clouds drift by. A suffocating feeling began to envelop her. She had heard similar stories from her friends, but now she was living it. If I don't speak up, then who will, she asked herself. Reaching for her phone, Lyra began recording what felt more like a trial than a restful flight. What happened next would change her life forever. Lyra Steele tried to suppress the feeling of being disrespected as Kara Fields, the head flight attendant, continued to ignore her. Lyra decided to focus on her headphones, playing a soft rock song to calm herself. However, just a few minutes later, a ding sounded from the call button. Jeffrey, the middle-aged man sitting behind her, whispered something to Kara as she approached. Lyra caught snippets of words like noisy and annoying. Kara turned back toward Lyra, her expression colder than before. "Ma'am, we've received a complaint that your headphones are disturbing other passengers. Could you lower the volume?" Lyra looked up at Kara, staring at her. Her headphones were noise-canceling, and the volume was low enough that no one should have been able to hear anything. Nevertheless, she replied politely, "The volume is very low, but if necessary, I'll turn it off." Kara didn't respond, giving only a curt nod before walking away. Lyra decided to stop listening to music altogether. She sat still, gazing out the window, trying to ignore the tense atmosphere. But Kara and Jeffrey's actions didn't stop there. A while later, Jeffrey pulled his bag closer, as if worried Lyra might touch it. Another woman moved her coat from the seat beside her, casting wary glances in Lyra's direction. Kara returned to serve the meal. When it was Lyra's turn, Kara placed the plate down on her tray table with a rushed motion, nearly slamming it down. Lyra looked at the plate. It wasn't the vegetarian meal she had ordered. "Excuse me, but I ordered vegetarian," Lyra said, trying to stay calm. Kara frowned, glancing reluctantly at her notes. "I'll check on that," she replied before walking away without another word. When Kara eventually returned with the correct meal, Jeffrey suddenly spoke up loudly. "She's making such a fuss over food. This is first class, not a fast food joint." Lyra turned her head, her eyes blazing with anger. "I'm not making a fuss. I'm just asking for what I paid for." Kara stepped in, raising her hand as if to stop Lyra, and said in a stern tone, "Ma'am, I need you to remain calm to avoid disturbing the other passengers." Lyra was stunned by the blatant unfairness. "Calm? What about him? I wasn't the one who started this." But Kara didn't reply. She turned and walked away, leaving Lyra feeling openly dismissed. A while later, Kara returned, this time with a more serious expression. "Ms. Steele, I need to have a word with you." Lyra looked up, her expression icy. "What now?" Kara responded, her voice low but firm. "Several passengers have expressed that they feel uncomfortable with your presence. To maintain harmony on this flight, I need you to move to the economy cabin." Lyra froze for a few seconds. "Uncomfortable with my presence? What exactly does that mean?" Kara maintained her rigid demeanor. "This is not personal. We're simply trying to ensure the satisfaction of all passengers." Lyra let out a dry laugh. "You're asking me to leave the seat I paid for just because a few people don't like me? No, I'm not going anywhere." Seeing Lyra refuse, Kara walked away but returned shortly with the captain. "If you refuse to cooperate, we'll have to escalate this issue to the airline, and you may be removed from the plane," Kara said coldly. The captain attempted to defuse the situation. "Ms. Steele, we understand this is upsetting, but I hope you can cooperate so the flight can proceed smoothly." Lyra stood up, looked the captain and Kara directly in the eye, and said clearly, "I've done nothing wrong. I'm not going anywhere. If you want to escalate this, go ahead. I've recorded everything." She held up her phone, revealing that she had been secretly recording Kara's actions and words earlier. "Let the public decide who's right and who's wrong." The atmosphere in the cabin grew even more tense. Some passengers began speaking loudly among themselves. A woman nearby, Mrs. Eleanor, spoke up. "I don't see that she's done anything wrong. She's only asking for what she deserves. This is first class, and we all paid for respect." A few other passengers nodded quietly in agreement, while Jeffrey looked visibly annoyed. Lyra sat back in her seat, her heart pounding. She knew refusing Kara's request might have consequences, but she couldn't allow this injustice to continue. "They think they can silence me. But they're wrong," she thought, clutching her phone tightly. She opened her camera app and began recording the events as they unfolded, knowing this wasn't just about this flight, it was about igniting a spark for something far greater. Lyra looked up, her expression icy. "What now?" Kara responded, her voice low but firm. "Several passengers have expressed that they feel uncomfortable with your presence. To maintain harmony on this flight, I need you to move to the economy cabin." Lyra froze for a few seconds. "Uncomfortable with my presence? What exactly does that mean?" Kara maintained her rigid demeanor. "This is not personal. We're simply trying to ensure the satisfaction of all passengers." Lyra let out a dry laugh. "You're asking me to leave the seat I paid for just because a few people don't like me? No, I'm not going anywhere." Seeing Lyra refuse, Kara walked away but returned shortly with the captain. "If you refuse to cooperate, we'll have to escalate this issue to the airline, and you may be removed from the plane," Kara said coldly. The captain attempted to defuse the situation. "Ms. Steele, we understand this is upsetting, But I hope you can cooperate so the flight can proceed smoothly. Lyra stood up, looked the captain and Kara directly in the eye, and said clearly, I've done nothing wrong. I'm not going anywhere. If you want to escalate this, go ahead. I've recorded everything. She held up her phone, revealing that she had been secretly recording Kara's actions and words earlier. Let the public decide who's right and who's wrong. The atmosphere in the cabin grew even more tense. Some passengers began speaking loudly among themselves. A woman nearby, Mrs. Eleanor, spoke up. I don't see that she's done anything wrong. She's only asking for what she deserves. This is first class, and we all paid for respect. A few other passengers nodded quietly in agreement, while Jeffrey looked visibly annoyed. Lyra sat back in her seat, her heart pounding. She knew refusing Kara's request might have consequences, but she couldn't allow this injustice to continue. They think they can silence me. But they're wrong, she thought, clutching her phone tightly. She opened her camera app and began recording the events as they unfolded, knowing this wasn't just about this flight, it was about igniting a spark for something far greater. She has every right to be here. This is first class, and anyone who pays for their seat deserves respect, Mrs. Eleanor declared firmly. Her words were met with a few murmurs of agreement. Another woman added, we should let this matter rest. Let's not turn this flight into a nightmare for everyone. Jeffrey, still visibly angry, remained silent. Kara, after a moment of hesitation, turned to the captain. He gave her a slight nod, signaling the matter should be settled. The captain approached Lyra, his tone softer now. Miss Steele, we deeply regret that this situation has caused you distress. You don't need to change seats, and we hope we can continue the flight without further tension. Lyra studied him for a moment before nodding. I don't want to escalate things, but I hope you treat everyone on this flight more fairly going forward. She sat back down, still clutching her phone tightly. As the captain walked away, Kara resumed her duties, though her demeanor was noticeably less curt. Lyra tried to focus on the music in her headphones, but Jeffrey's muttering broke through. People like her don't belong here. It's just unbearable. Lyra sighed but chose not to respond. They want me to lose my temper. I won't give them the satisfaction, she thought. She closed her eyes, telling herself, just a few more hours. Then this will be over. Looking out the window at the endless expanse of blue sky, Lyra felt she had achieved a small victory. She hadn't been forced out, and she had shown that injustice shouldn't go unchallenged. When the plane landed at Lax, a wave of relief seemed to wash over the cabin, but the tension from the flight still lingered. Kara and the other crew members maintained their professionalism, though Kara's glances at Lyra were tinged with lingering resentment as the passengers began gathering their belongings. Lyra decided to remain in her seat a bit longer, waiting for the first-class cabin to clear. She didn't want to deal with the curious and judgmental stares. Mrs. Eleanor, the elderly woman who had stood up for Lyra, paused beside her seat before leaving. You're very strong, she said warmly. I just wanted to tell you I admire how you handled this. Don't let them make you feel like you don't belong. Lyra thanked Mrs. Eleanor, her eyes glimmering with emotion. As soon as she got home, Lyra opened her phone and reviewed the video she had recorded during the flight. Every word, every glance, and every act of discrimination she endured from Kara, Jeffrey, and others were captured clearly. She hesitated for a moment. Should I post this? Would it make things worse? But then she thought about those who didn't have a voice, the ones who had experienced the same but couldn't speak up. If I don't do this, who will? Lyra uploaded the video to her social media account with a caption, "When you pay for a first-class flight but are treated like you don't belong." This is a story many have lived through, and it's time for change. Air quality. Within hours, Lyra's post went viral. The video garnered millions of views, with hundreds of thousands of comments and shares. Her fans, people who had faced similar injustices, and equality advocates flooded the comments section with support. I can't believe this happened to Lyra. If a celebrity gets treated this way, what about regular people? Thank you, Lyra, for speaking up. I've been through something similar and didn't know what to do. Air equality is necessary. Airlines need to be held accountable. The hashtag air quality quickly trended on Twitter and Instagram. At Skylux Airlines headquarters, the management team convened urgently to address the situation. Lyra's video wasn't just dominating social media, it had also been picked up by major news outlets. A national news anchor commented, "The incident on Lyra Steele's flight exemplifies the injustices many face in the aviation industry. Discrimination, even in subtle forms, leaves a lasting impact." Skylux was forced to release an official statement. "We deeply regret the uncomfortable experience Ms. Lyra Steele encountered on our flight. We are committed to conducting a thorough investigation and will take appropriate measures to ensure all passengers are treated with the respect they deserve." But the apology did little to appease public outrage. An apology isn't enough. They need to take concrete action, one social media user commented. In the days that followed, Lyra's story became the focal point of widespread discussions. Many who had faced similar situations shared their experiences under the air quality hashtag. An Asian woman recounted being asked to show her documents twice at the boarding gate, while other passengers were not. A black man shared that he had been denied an upgrade he paid for with the excuse that the seats were full, only to see the same seat assigned to another passenger moments later. The ripple effect of Lyra's video sparked a movement, one that was much bigger than the flight itself. It was a call to action, demanding accountability and equality in the skies. Lyra took the time to read each story, her heart heavy. "This isn't just about me. This is so much bigger," she thought. Amid the storm of public outcry, Lyra received a call from Kara Fields. Kara's voice trembled on the other end of the line. "Ms. Steele, I know I was wrong. I want to apologize." Lyra was silent for a moment. She hadn't expected Kara to reach out to her directly. "Why are you saying this now?" Lyra asked, her voice calm but firm. Kara replied, "Ben, I didn't realize how much I'd hurt others until I saw the public reaction. I've reflected on my actions and I deeply regret what I did." Lyra didn't rush to accept the apology, but she decided to give Kara a chance to meet in person and discuss the matter. Standing by her window, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline, Lyra thought about how her post had grown into more than a protest. It had sparked the air quality movement. "This is just the beginning," she told herself. "They thought they could silence me, but now they'll have to listen to all of us." Picking up her phone, she began planning her next steps. What had started on a single flight had now become a fight for millions. Lyra knew she couldn't stop, and she was ready to face whatever came next. 2 days later, Lyra and Kara met at a small cafe on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Out of her sharp flight attendant uniform, Kara looked noticeably different, her face etched with worry and regret. Lyra sat upright, her expression calm but piercing. Kara spoke first, her voice unsteady. "Ms. Steele, I am truly sorry for how I treated you. I realize now how wrong I was, and I'm trying to make amends." Lyra nodded, her tone measured and cool. "You know I'm not the only one who's gone through this, right? What happened on that flight is just one part of a much larger problem." Kara took a deep breath and nodded. She explained that she had worked in the airline industry for over 20 years and had gradually developed unconscious biases from her environment. "I didn't realize my attitude was discriminatory. It wasn't until I saw your video and read the public's feedback that I understood." Lyra maintained her firm demeanor. "So what are you going to do to change? An apology isn't enough. People need to see that you're committed to making things right." Kara responded with determination in her voice. "I've requested Skylux to allow me to participate in diversity and inclusion training programs. I want to ensure no one ever has to experience this again." Lyra studied her for a long moment before nodding slightly. "Fine. But I'll be watching to see how you follow through on your words." Meanwhile, the air equality movement continued to gain momentum. Major media outlets like CNN, BBC, and the New York Times reported on Lyra's story, exposing deep-seated issues within the airline industry and customer service as a whole. Many celebrities joined in, sharing their own experiences. An Asian actor recounted being denied entry to the business class cabin, despite having a valid ticket because he didn't look like a businessman. A Paralympic athlete described how airline staff refused to assist her with her wheelchair when boarding a flight. Lyra used her platform to spark broader conversations. She hosted a live stream where individuals shared their stories of injustice. "We need to create change from the inside out," Lyra said during the broadcast. "This isn't just about apologies, it's about real action to ensure everyone is treated with respect." Under growing public pressure, Skylux Airlines held a major press conference to address the issue. The company's CEO, Richard Connolly, announced, "We acknowledge there have been failures in how we serve our customers. Skylux is committed to change. We will implement mandatory training programs for all employees, improve our complaint handling policies, and collaborate with organizations like Air for All to foster a more inclusive environment." The announcement received a mix of positive responses and skepticism. "They're just trying to save face. We need to see action, not just promises," one Twitter user commented. Lyra, undeterred, decided to leverage her influence to expand the movement globally. She organized a major conference in New York, bringing together airline industry leaders, social activists, and victims of discrimination. The conference, titled Equal Skies, focused on implementing concrete solutions to improve customer service, such as diversity and inclusion training programs for airline staff, a transparent feedback system that allows passengers to easily and directly report issues, public commitments from airlines to address and resolve discrimination cases. In her keynote speech, Lyra said, "This isn't just about me. It's about everyone. We all deserve to be treated fairly, no matter who we are, where we come from, or what we look like." Surprisingly, a few weeks after the conference, Jeffrey, the passenger who had discriminated against Lyra on the flight, spoke out on a television program. "I've done a lot of thinking about what happened. I was wrong. Wrong to judge Ms. Steele just because she was different from me. I hope she can forgive me." Though Lyra didn't respond directly to Jeffrey, she shared her thoughts on social media. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean we can move forward and do better." Returning home after days of tireless work, Lyra sat by the window of her studio, gazing at the night sky. The blinking lights of planes high above reminded her that there was still much to do. "I got through that awful flight, but this is just the first step. I have to keep flying higher," she thought. Lyra opened her laptop and began outlining her plans for the next project. To her, this wasn't just a fight, it was a mission. A mission to ensure the skies, vast as they are, belong to everyone. After the Equal Skies conference, the Air for All movement became an unstoppable force. Dozens of major airlines spanning the US, Europe, and Asia began committing to inclusive and equitable practices. Notable achievements included Global Inclusion Training Program. Air for All partnered with international organizations to roll out training programs for thousands of aviation employees. Customer Feedback App, a digital platform developed by Air for All, enabled passengers to document and report discriminatory behavior, garnering widespread support. Cross-industry collaboration. Other service industries, such as hospitality, ride-sharing, and cruise travel, joined the movement, broadening its reach beyond aviation. Lyra's efforts not only reshaped the airline industry but also ignited a global call for equality across all service sectors. Through Air for All, she helped create a world where everyone could move freely and be treated with dignity, regardless of where their journey took them. Lyra is now not only the face of Air for All but also a global activist, frequently invited to international forums on equality. Kara Fields, after participating in Air for All training programs, underwent significant changes in her mindset and attitude. Skylux Airlines assigned her to lead internal training programs for other flight attendants. Kara invited Lyra to one such training session as a special guest. During the event, Lyra looked at Kara and said, "I never thought we'd meet again like this, but I'm glad you've changed. This doesn't just help me, it helps thousands of others as well." Kara, visibly moved, responded, "Thanks to you, I've learned to reflect on myself. I hope we can work together to right these wrongs." Lyra decided to elevate the Air for All movement with a special initiative called the Open Skies Initiative. Its goal was to push for global policy changes, ensuring fairness and equality across all sectors of transportation and tourism. She organized a major international conference in Geneva, where industry leaders, politicians, and social activists signed the Every Passenger Matters pledge, outlining core principles every company must follow. In her speech at the conference, Lyra said, "I once thought one person couldn't change a system. But now I know that change begins with stories with one voice, growing into millions of voices." Skylux Airlines organized a special flight called the Flight of Unity, with Lyra and others who had contributed to the Air for All movement on board. The flight was a meaningful event, not just connecting cultures but symbolizing transformation. On the flight, Kara, now a leader in inclusivity, personally served Lyra. Smiling, she said, Thank you for helping me find the true meaning of this job. Lyra smiled back and replied, Thank you for never giving up on making a change. As the plane ascended, Lyra gazed out the window at the vast expanse of the sky. She knew this journey wasn't just about transforming the airline industry, it was the first step toward creating a better world. At 30,000 feet, Lyra recorded a short video to send to all those who had supported the Air for All movement. We've accomplished something incredible. But this journey isn't over. Let's keep speaking up, keep fighting, and together, create a sky where everyone is respected. Returning home, Lyra felt a sense of peace for the first time in months. She gazed at the sky through her studio window, a gentle smile spreading across her face. The sky doesn't belong to just one person, and we've proven that. The flight has landed, and Lyra has shown that change is never easy, but it is never impossible. She fought not just for herself, but for everyone who has ever been denied respect. Her message is clear: equality isn't a privilege, it's a right we all deserve. If Lyra Steele's story has inspired you, hit like to show your support, share to spread this message to more people, and subscribe to continue exploring meaningful stories with us. Your support is the strength we need to build a fairer world both on the ground and in the skies.